Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Geno's Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Geno's, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy, and contributor to Yahoo Fantasy. In this podcast, Blake and I are going to talk about the biggest hot shots and have-nots of the early season. Let's get it. Now, of course, I have your friend and my best hatless friend, Blake Creamer, with me. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
I am hatless today, and you know what? It feels nice. It feels refreshing, but also I feel like my forehead is getting bigger, as I get older. So, I'll have to work on that. I think there's some implants that can be done, or there's some treatments. Anyways, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing all right. My forehead is not growing bigger. I continue to wear my hat religiously to avoid any YouTube comments. YouTube comments have gotten a little spicy recently. I don't know if you've been checking that out, but yeah, they're taking issue with this. Feeling a little noticed. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, they are spicy there, but we're here for it, people. All right, we're here to service you. All right, giggity.
All right. With that in mind, let's jump into some newsies. Talk about, we got to talk about McDavid. Gonna miss 1 to 2 weeks with an upper body injury is what came out today. So we'll obviously hope for the lesser end of that. Hockey's just better when McDavid is on the ice doing his thing. So we'll hope that he's back sooner rather than later, but definitely you're going to have to make some adjustments to your lineups there. Rasmus Andersson, suspended 4 games, is going to appeal. He served the first game of that suspension today, so if he does get it reduced, then might not affect your lineups quite as much. Actually, on Yahoo right now, as of recording this on Sunday evening, he's listed as O for out, so you can drop him on your IR Plus if you got IR Plus on Yahoo. So you might want to do that if that's still a thing by the time you're listening to this podcast, and then kind of set your lineups in advance. And maybe you can get through a few games and get this suspension closer to being over with without having to think about dropping Rasmus Andersson. If he is suspended and they go back to him being, I think it was NA is the usual designation on Yahoo, then you're probably not going to have a spot for him, and he's just going to waste a roster spot on your team. So think about that if that's an option for you in your league. Pavel Buchnevich still not back yet. Not really sure. Seems like just a day-to-day thing at this point. We'll check in again with the next game. A couple of New Jersey Devils of note for this week, especially with the good schedule for the Devils that we talked about in the waiver wire show on Saturday. Eric Holla is optimistic to practice Monday, and Nico Hischier will practice Monday.
Nice.
So it seems like they're likely to get both of those guys back for this week upcoming. Sebastian Aho missed Saturday's game again, and it seems similar to Buchnevich. It's just going to be a day-by-day, game-by-game thing at this point until Aho is back. Sam Bennett, we did get a little bit more news. It sounds like Paul Maurice is saying that maybe Saturday versus Seattle, we could see Sam Bennett back in the saddle again. So hopefully we get that for all of us who have been drafting Sam Bennett and stashing him this whole time. Hopefully we get to see what that looks like with him back in our lineups. And then the longest one is Andrei Burakovsky, set to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Unfortunately, got injured in the game the other night. So make your lineup adjustments in your deep leagues accordingly. I know you're a fan of Burakovsky, Blake. Is there any of these that stick out to you? Anything for the listeners on these players?
You know what? I was definitely big on Burakovsky, but the truth is I didn't get him anywhere. I got him in like a crap ton of best ball leagues with like really late picks, but that's it. I didn't get him in any of my redraft leagues, so it's not too bad, but that sucks. Yeah, that's a long time, and I really do think that's like a 60-point player, even on that team. So that's rough if you drafted him. Also, what are your thoughts with McDavid out? Who's bumping up to power play 1 there in Edmonton? What, like, is it, do we got to take a gander at Evander. Is he going up there? Is he going to beef out of control and just stand in front of the net and annoy people? I mean, who do you think's going up?
I mean, that would be the odds-on favorite, I would have to assume. I'm kind of curious because he did leave that game, right? I don't know if they had a power play after that. I could maybe try to get this up live, but I think you would have to assume that the most likely scenario is that it's Evander Kane. But yeah, they could take this time in between now and their next game here and really kind of decide what they want to do. Obviously, Evander Kane, Connor McDavid, two very different styles of play. So it's not like Evander Kane and Zach Hyman seem to usually kind of occupy that same role on the power play. And so it's hard to really say if we'll see something similar to that. It doesn't look like they really got back on the power play from what I'm seeing here to actually give us any kind of real indication of what they might do with McDavid out. Their only power play, I believe, was they didn't have any power plays in the third. So,
right.
Yeah, no wisdom to be gleaned from the game that was. Just on a talent basis, you would assume Evander Kane. I think he's the clear next guy up on talent basis, but they may decide to get a little fancy with it. It wouldn't be the first time. So I definitely wouldn't assume that it's Kane, but that would be my guess if I had to make one. All right, let's roll into the meat of the episode here. Let's talk about hot shots. These are the players that are the hottest across the league. And when we talk about those kind of players, we got to talk first off, there's not too much to be said about these guys. You're not probably going out to acquire them or trade them away based on what's happening right now. But Jack Hughes and Alex DeBrincat off the top here, absolutely smashing. Hughes has 10 points in 4 games, 4 goals, 6 assists. DeBrincat up to 7 goals in 5 games and 11 points. Like, these guys are just going absolutely nuclear right now. Jack Hughes, 9th in shots per 60, 4th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 5th in scoring chances, 4 per 60 on ice, all the while skating almost 23 minutes a night. He's absolutely going off at the moment. I don't know if there's too much that we can really give in terms of fantasy advice for these guys. I guess one thing we could say for Hughes in particular, has Hughes elevated himself? Is this enough of a stretch for you to say conclusively Jack Hughes is like a top 5 player across the league? Like, has he elevated himself above the players that he was routinely going behind in most drafts this offseason?
You and I were high on this guy for sure. Like I was taking this guy, or I would have taken him at 5 or 6 really in my drafts, and I never got a chance to because he was always taken, or I was too far behind. But I mean, if this keeps up, that there's no question. Like, I saw a tweet the other day, and it was actually a legitimate question. It's like, is Jack Hughes like a threat to Leon Draisaitl for 2nd overall in league scoring? Maybe, right? Maybe just that sentence is insane, right? Yeah. But the way this man is showing out, I mean, obviously the metrics that you talked about there, like Leon Draisaitl does it a lot differently, right? He's hyper efficient, still good shots and stuff, but Jack Hughes is probably next to McDavid the most dynamic player in the league. Like, he's amazing at chances off the rush, shot assists off the rush. I mean, carries into the zone. This guy is number 1. He's on an island by himself, right? Even over McDavid in some spots, right? So I'm just, the short answer is yes. I think this guy should be considered a top 5 player in the league, and definitely a top 5 fantasy asset. 22 minutes, like, he was getting under 20 last season. So now if he's getting well over 20 this season, we could see 120-point season from this guy. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I see it exactly the same way. I projected him for 107 based on a 20-minute average time on ice. If he is going to get, 22, I do think they had a couple of overtime games in there, so he probably got a little bit inflated on those, but still, regardless, if he's in that 21 and a half, 22, somewhere in there, then you're going to run into more points. And Jack Hughes is getting a lot of points at a pretty extreme rate, and everything looks stellar under the hood. So I can't really say that it's going to tail off too much. Obviously, 10 points in 4 games is probably a little bit too far, but I do think that we could be looking at a 120-point season from Hughes, and that wouldn't shock anyone at this point. And then DeBrincat, guy I projected for 80 points on the season, 37 goals. I had a solid projection on him, 18 and a half minutes average time on ice, and so far, yeah, the 11 points in 5 games, and he's doing that with yes, just over 17 minutes average time on ice, which is pretty crazy. A lot of that is just extreme efficiency, 41% shooting percentage. That's obviously going to come down. But again, really solid numbers, 38th in shots per 60, 22nd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, just 77th in on-ice Corsi 4 per 60, and 81st in scoring chances, 4 per 60. I think that there is a little bit of a mirage going on with Detroit. We were talking about it before the show, but they are not showing out well in the team stats overall, especially at 5v5. The power play looks legit. They're generating a ton of chances, doing a lot of things really well there, but they do lead the league in 5v5 shooting percentage. And the Corsi 4 percentage, way down the list, 27th in the league. Scoring chance 4 percentage, way down the list, 27th in the league there as well. So right towards the bottom at even strength. At 5v5 rather, I guess, to make that distinction. But overall, very happy with DeBrincat, very happy with having a pretty solid projection on him. Maybe a little bit concerned, I guess, that the minutes aren't quite there as to what I thought they would be, but I do think that, in a case where they were behind, then he would probably get a few more minutes, so it might equalize out in the end. Definitely a hot start, though. Definitely what you want to see from a guy going to a new situation and absolutely having the time of his life right from the start. So love to see that from Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking about a few more guys who've absolutely been lighting it up to start the season here. Let's talk about Joel Eriksson Ek for a second. 7 points in 5 games here, almost 19 minutes average time on ice. Obviously, getting that top power play deployment. Kaprizov is a player that we've both been very interested in through the offseason, had big projections on, and Eriksson Ek really taking advantage of that deployment on the power play alongside Kaprizov, but also holding his own at even strength here. So what are your expectations for Joel Eriksson Ek? He's kind of a player who always shows out well in advanced metrics, always has pretty solid numbers under the hood, but has never really converted at an extreme rate. Definitely not to the extent that he has so far in the season. I don't think anyone is really expecting that he's now like a point per game plus player, but like I had a 60-point projection on him. Do you think I should be adjusting my expectations higher than that?
I mean, he's had a great start, right? 7 points in 5 games. That's excellent. I have him for 68. So I feel comfortable 60 to 68. I think that's probably where it's going to land. Like you said, I don't think this is a point per game player, but doing a little bit of a deep dive into Eriksson Ek and his metrics so far this season in 5 games, like everything's kind of right in line with where it usually is, at least at 5v5. All the numbers are fairly similar, right? And that's nice to see, right? Obviously, his IPP is 100% right now. That's going to change, obviously, but shots per 60 are pretty much the same. He's having a little bit better shooting percentage than he does, but everything else is looking good. So I think it's sustainable what he's doing. Currently his shooting percentage is 25%. Like that's not going to hold, right? But a lot of that's on the power play. Like 3 of his 4 goals have been on the power play, right? At a really high shooting percentage. So everything's going to normalize, but this is a player I love. And if you're in category leagues, like this guy, it is a priority, right? He's his deployment's decent, like just under 19 minutes. I love that. And he fills every category, right? Hits, blocks, like penalty minutes too. He'll get you those shots. Like, he's at 3.2 shots per game when he's matching what he did last season. Like everything's just right in line for Eriksson Ek. And he's a player I'm interested in for sure. And I drafted in a couple spots as well. Did you get Eriksson Ek anywhere, Nate?
No, I didn't get Eriksson Ek anywhere. It often just fell in a part of the draft where I wasn't after centers. If you get an elite center early, then tending to fade centers till the bitter end. And Eriksson Ek usually went a little bit ahead of that based on a solid season last year. So didn't end up with them anywhere. obviously would have liked to have had some of those points in the early going here, but do think similar to you that it'll probably normalize in that kind of mid-range. Now, I will say if you do agree with me that Matt Boldy has the potential to break out to an even higher level this year, then Eriksson Ek could get himself kind of rising tide floats all boats. So Eriksson Ek could definitely see some bonus from that if that does come to pass. Let's keep rolling. I want to talk about Chandler Stevenson, who's not a player who ever shows out well in the metrics that we like to look at, but he's had a hot start on the season, 7 points in 6 games, 5 points in his last 5 here, averaging over 19 minutes time on ice. Definitely doesn't look good in the advanced metrics. 348th in the league in shots per 60, 255th in individual scoring chances for per 60 over those last 5 games. 178th in on-ice Corsi for per 60 and 190th in on-ice scoring chances for per 60. What is your expectation for Chandler Stevenson? Has this hot streak changed anything about the way that you view the player moving forward?
It's tough. I think Chandler Stevenson is going to be our arch nemesis this season. He's just one of these guys who are like, hey, look at these metrics to help you predict offense for your teams. Oh, and also Chandler Stevenson. Yeah, take a look at this, right? This is kind of an outlier, but yeah, this guy's pissing me off. I'm not adjusting my expectations as of yet, but I mean, he's just a very opportunistic player. Like I have him for 61 points. That's what I projected Chandler Stevenson for. And yeah, I mean, he could get more than that. What the hell? But I, everything under the hood does not show that, right? I mean, he's shooting 28.6% right now. I mean, he only has 2 goals, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. But he's out there on the ice, and his line is opportunistic. And also Mark Stone. Hi, Mark. He's I don't trust the player either, but he's opportunistic as well. And he's been playing every game where I thought Mark Stone was going to be a little bit more in and out of the lineup so far, and he hasn't been. But yeah, Vegas has just been showing out. This guy's a big part of it, and you have to respect Chandler Stevenson. And he doesn't get a lot of respect, actually. Like I just saw him dropped recently, I think in our experts league. Yes, I think it was Hutch. Hutch just dropped Chandler Stevenson. Buddy, what did this man do to you? All right, come on. But yeah, I mean, you have to kind of ride with this until like the true Chandler Stevenson comes out, like what we're seeing under the hood. But I mean, 7 points in 6 games, 96-point pace, 6-0 Vegas Golden Knights. Damn, you got to roll with this, man.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I would still drop him if he wasn't going to crack the lineup. You have the Tuesday super heavy night coming up this week where every team in the league is playing. If he's not playing for you then, and he's not playing for you on Thursday, just because you feel like maybe you have like in one league I have Matthews and Barkov, right? Is Chandler Stevenson going to play for me in that league? Probably not. So, there are situations probably out there where I would consider dropping Stevenson even in the midst of the hot streak, but for sure, I think at this point, if you got him, you're going to stick with him for a little bit if it makes sense for your team. I want to talk also about Evgeny Malkin. This is a guy that I got in a few spots because he's continually disrespected for no good reason. 8 points, 4 goals, 8 points in 5 games to open his season. 18 minutes average time on ice. 21st in the league in shots per 60. You love to see that. Yeah. On ice numbers looking really strong too. 17th in Corsi for per 60. 31st in scoring chances for per 60. Definitely, he's redlining a little bit. 100% IPP, 20% shooting percentage to open the season. Nobody's expecting him to keep up an 8 points per 5 games pace for the rest of the season here, but I do think that we're talking about a really solid player who's only ever been really solid, like guaranteed point per game when healthy. And maybe this year, Erik Karlsson on board, power play takes a little bit of a step and Evgeny Malkin gets back to a 90-point pace. Is that so crazy to think?
Certainly not crazy. I mean, he's done it before. Obviously, he has the acumen. And who's to say, like, this man hasn't been fighting a nagging injury for like 2 or 3 years? You know what I mean? Like, he looked great last season, 83 points in 82 games. And he's just looks like he's been shot out of a cannon here at the start of this season. So I love that. I'm happy for the guy. I don't trust it, though. Honestly, like, not this pace. He's on 131-point pace, right? So... yeah. I think, 90 points would be absolute ceiling, I think, for this player. I don't think he can sustain it based on the stuff you mentioned, right? He's redlining in a lot of metrics right now, including his shots on goal per 60, right? That's not exactly normal for him, right? And not lately, right? Like last season, even just looking at shots per game, right? 2.9 shots per game in a great season last year, and 11.3 shooting percentage. Whereas this season, he's at four shots per game, right? In only 5 games, but that's really significant, right? And his shooting percentage is much higher. So I expect this to tail off, but yeah, Pittsburgh looks good. And I love the addition of Karlsson there. They seem pissed off. We've talked about Malcolm before, and I've talked about him too on the Cream of the Crop show, just as a sell high to me. And I still think he is, right? I think where you were getting Malkin in drafts, I think you could round up like by a couple rounds and maybe pick up someone really slick who's maybe, not performing at the level you thought they would, right? And that's something I'm looking to do if I have Malkin, if it's out there, right? But if not, just sit back and enjoy the sweet, sweet production this man is bringing you. It's awesome.
For sure. Let's go to their rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers. Talk about some Travis Konechny. 7 points, 5 goals in his first 5 games of the season. A titch below 17 minutes average time on ice, which is something that probably would have concerned us a fair bit if he hadn't been scoring so much to open the year here. 35th in the league in shots per 60. That's a good number, but 143rd in individual scoring chances for per 60, which is a little bit interesting. And then the on-ice numbers are not great either. 168th in Corsi 4 per 60, 195th in scoring chances 4 per 60, riding 100% shooting IPP and 29% shooting percentage in the early going here. Obviously, nobody's anticipating a 115-point pace to continue for the rest of the season, but Konechny is obviously showing that he can continue to convert. The bigger concern in my mind is he going to be this guy on a Scott Laughton, Tyson Forster line, or is he going to force his way up the lineup and be on that Couturier line, which is going to get the most of the minutes here? And can we safely assume that he's going to be on Power Play 1 all season? They've done some interesting things with the power play so far. It's been a little bit all over the place. So how do you feel about Konechny? Is this the high watermark for the whole season opening up right here?
I don't think so. I like the player a lot. I didn't get him anywhere, unfortunately, right? It was just one of those things where I didn't need right wingers at that point, or he's left winger now. But yeah, like I just missed out on Travis Konechny. But I think he's got more to give, obviously. And when you look at the time on ice, like I want to see the time on ice from last season, right? He averaged over 20 minutes, right? And we know they were decimated by injuries, and big injuries, right? Sean Couturier, Atkinson, all these guys that are getting, buku minutes now, right? But I think it's going to start to normalize. I really do think that Philadelphia will start going back to players like Owen Tippett and Konechny as the season kind of wears on. Like, I don't trust Cam Atkinson and like Sean Couturier. It's nice to see. It's a good story, but like that guy's banged up. It's going to be tough for him to sort of maintain what he's been able to do so far. So I am low key high on Travis Konechny. Plus 2 of his goals have been shorties. He got 2 shorthanded goals the other night. So he can bring that to the table as well, which is really good in like a cupful or any league where you get extra points for shorthanded. Like this guy can do that. He's really good shorthanded, and Konechny to me really passes the eye test. He's very noticeable when he's out there. So I really do think that he's going to get some more deployment. And that's why I think that the ceiling has kind of not been met yet, right? And it's only been 5 games, but I like the start for sure.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The ice time isn't great, but I'm not super concerned about it just yet. I think throughout the season, those lines will get shuffled around a little bit unless the Flyers just like crush the entire season, which would be a pretty surprising outcome overall. I will say that the Flyers definitely seem to be a better offensive environment, even at 5v5, 8th in the league in scoring chances 4 per 60. That's a nice number to look at in the early going here. Definitely being buoyed by Couturier. I think he is the entire story there for the full team, kind of raising their game as a whole. But definitely, if Konechny gets even like even like 50% exposure to Couturier at even strength on the season, then I think you're looking at raising the level that we both thought that he would have at even strength. I projected him for 36 goals, 68 points. That was based on almost 20 minutes time on ice. So definitely he's taken, from the early deployment anyway, looks like he's going to take a bit of a bath on the deployment. But I do think that the team is looking to be much better than we anticipated. So we may get a little bit of a normalization between those two factors, and we end up with much the same result. So feel still fairly confident that Konechny will end up in the 65 to 70 point range when all is said and done. Let's keep rolling and talk about some defensemen here. Shane Gostisbehere, hot to start the year as well. 6 points in his 6 games, 5 in his last 5 here, averaging just over 19 minutes average time on ice. The shots on goal per 60, 30th in the league. Solid, not spectacular amongst defensemen. 50th in individual scoring chances for per 60. Corsi 4 per 60, 90th. Not great. Scoring chances 4 per 60, 55th. So overall, I think Gostisbehere is a guy that I'm definitely continuing to be interested in. The Detroit Red Wings power play is actually looking very strong, very dangerous, generating a ton of chances. Gostisbehere has been a part of that so far, and from all accounts will continue to be, at least until it starts to slow down. So do think that Gostisbehere is one of these guys who gets on these hot streaks and just goes off for like 10 games and then goes missing again for a while. So you might anticipate that that could happen a little later on if Detroit as a team starts to slow down. Does Gostisbehere also start to slow down? So if there was a trade high moment here for Shane Gostisbehere, I would explore that. I don't know. I think it will take a little bit longer just because of the presence of Moritz Seider, who everybody has much higher on in general than Gostisbehere. But if Gostisbehere, after 10 games still has like 8 points, 9 points or something like that, and people are starting to take notice that he's among the league leaders amongst defensemen in points scored, then there might be a sell high chance for him there. What about you, Blake? What do you think about Gostisbehere? Would you be looking to sell him at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it makes sense for your team, but yeah, I'm never a big fan of defensemen that get under 20 minutes deployment, right? No matter how offensive they are, right? This guy's getting power play 1 deployment, and he's a great power play 1 defenseman. There's no question there. He's done it really well, basically his whole career. So I'm so happy that him and Seider are getting that deployment on power play 1, because it's great for Seider too, right? It makes him really rosterable in points leagues. Not that you're going to drop Seider, but like he's actually valuable because he's on power play 1. But that all said, 19 minutes, 7 seconds average time on ice. That show ain't no good. So yeah, definitely that's a red flag to me, right? And unless there's an injury, he's not going to get more. And I don't even know if there was an injury that Shane Gostisbehere would get more minutes. It'd probably be like Jake Wallman or something like that. Ben Shart. I always call him Ben Shart. That's terrible. But I think you know what I'm talking about. I can't even say the man's name. Sherratt. There we go.
Sherratt.
Ben Shart. All right. That might be the worst one of all time. The Sherratt. We're gonna make this happen. All right. But yeah. So. Yeah, I would absolutely look to get off Gostisbehere if you can. But again, if not, 6 points in 6 games, power play 1, you're loving it. And that deployment could go up. Let's bump it up over 20 minutes, I think. And then I'm a lot more comfortable, right? 20, 21 minutes average time on ice. And then I'm really comfortable holding this player.
For sure. Yeah, let's talk about Jake Sanderson up on the top power play in Ottawa. Definitely something that a lot of people were looking to see. 6 points in 5 games, including 3 goals to start the season. Personally, I don't want to lead the witness here, but I remain unconvinced that this is a major fantasy contributor for the length of the season. Mm-hmm. This feels a little bit like Shabbat to me, almost 22 minutes a night, getting the top power play. The power play in Ottawa still doesn't look terrific, middle of the pack and slightly below in most of the metrics we like to look at, the shot attempts and the scoring chances and things like that. Yep. So it hasn't really come on track there in Ottawa just yet. They did have a really good power play last year, so you anticipate at some point they'll start to put that back together. But Sanderson in particular, like, this is not a guy who generates a ton of shots. 64th in shots per 60. That's not a great number. 141st in individual scoring chances for per 60. So not a guy who really like breaks down the defense and gets to dangerous areas. So definitely the 33% shooting percentage is something that you're going to look at to come down. But even like the Corsi for the on ice numbers here, 84th in Corsi 4 per 60, 68th in scoring chances 4 per 60. Ottawa has had a really good start here.
Yes.
And Sanderson has not had terrific numbers underlying. And so I remain pretty unconvinced. We do see occasions, where a guy scores a bunch of points and it kind of goes to his feet a little bit and he starts to, believe a little bit and the metrics start to improve after the points are there already. So maybe that happens for Sanderson. I'm not ruling out the possibility that Sanderson, grows into this role and actually becomes a super valuable player for fantasy purposes for the rest of the season. But I'm just saying I'm not over the moon as I see so many people online with Sanderson at this point. Your thoughts, Blake?
Yeah. I mean, it sucks when we just agree all the time, Nate, but damn it, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've saw people, like, I've got messages too, like, oh, damn, I should have drafted Jake Sanderson instead of Thomas Chabot. It's like, no, why would you do that? I would still take Thomas Chabot over Jake Sanderson, even with Sanderson on power play 1. I think Chabot does more. He has the potential to do more. And like you said, like, I think this is kind of like the shiny object of the week, right? Jake Sanderson, he's on power play 1. So yeah, that's great. Pick him up for that. But he's, I am not confident in this, right? I think he's going to be a valuable player, but he's not someone you need to move heaven and earth to get this player on your team, right? Just because he's on power play 1. There's lots of power play 1 quarterbacks out there. Like, is this guy much different than Cam York or Travis Sanheim? Like, not really. And they get more minutes, right? So this all said, I really like Jake Sanderson, and I did pick him up in 2 leagues. I got him in 2 leagues, but that was over like a really streamer level player. And now I have Jake Sanderson in there, right? I'm not dropping like amazing players because I think Sanderson's going to be the next big thing, right? I still think like a 50-point season for Jake Sanderson would be a huge success to me. And obviously I've talked before about, Brady Tkachuk mentioning Jake Sanderson and how important he is to the team. So this guy's going to be a great player for this team. He does all the intangibles, things that maybe we can't, capture with the metrics that we're looking at. But in terms of the metrics we're looking at, it's not looking that good, and he's kind of redlining in a lot of things here. So I expect this to sort of come down, and I expect him to kind of be bumped off power play 1 at some point too.
Yeah. Also, just, the shots are not there. He's not a guy who hits like almost at all. So he's not giving you that. The blocks are not anything to write home about. Mm-hmm. So there's just not a ton there in the early going, other than, some extreme point totals because he's shooting 33% on the season. So we'll see. I'm not, like I said, young player, lots of potential, could take a few more steps even throughout the course of the season. And definitely it's exciting when he's on power play 1 and things are clicking. But I do think that there's a little bit of a reckoning coming for him. If you can get a massive trade done involving Jake Sanderson, if someone thinks, oh man, I got to get a piece of that Ottawa power play, Sanderson's locked in, look at how well he's doing, then I'd definitely be looking at this as a potential sell high candidate. A couple more guys we got to get in here. So we got to talk about Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 6 points in 5 games. His last 5 games here, about 16.5 minutes average time on ice. Blake, I'll kick it to you right away. What are you seeing from Kotkaniemi? This is a guy obviously with a big draft pedigree who's never really lived up to it. Carolina, a good spot for offense. Obviously, the Aho injury opens a door here for him to showcase a little bit of his potential. Are you buying in even a little bit on Kotkaniemi here?
I'm certainly interested, right? Like, he's done enough where you can't really ignore it at this point, right? He's a second line center there, so he's in the top 6. I mean, he's on power play 2, that's fine, but he's been playing with Seth Jarvis and Stefan Noesen, and they've been putting in some work. Like, that's been a really good second line. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Seth Jarvis. I picked him up almost everywhere early on in the season. I drafted him in some spots too, but I mean, Kotkaniemi is part of that, right? And you look at some of the things that he's been doing, like, first off, his deployment is up, and I love that, right? This is not a player that ever got deployed with any kind of consistency. Like, his highest ever before this season was 14 minutes and 48 seconds average time on ice. So far this season, it's 16 minutes and 11 seconds, right? And power play 2. So Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I haven't picked him up anywhere, but I'm certainly watching. And I think if you want this player, now's kind of the time to go do it, right? Because I think right now their line is cooking. And this guy does other things too. Like he's a beefer. Last season, 105 hits in 82 games. I love that. He even had 11 power play points there, toiling away on power play too. So, if he gets a chance to move up the lineup, I think this is the player that can do something. And they invested a lot in this player, right? With that, that whole debacle with Montreal there, they ended up, really overpaying for what this player was bringing. So hopefully he is able to kind of return some of that. He's only 23, right? They got they got this guy, they got Svech, Jarvis. That's a really nice young team there in Carolina. And I don't know, what do you think, Nate? Like, it seems like Brind'Amour is not as Brind'Amour-y as he usually is this season. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, he's not spreading the lines so thin. Like, he's actually deploying players a little bit more. Like Jarvis, as an example, is getting like almost 20 minutes a night, which is amazing. And I know there's been some injuries, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this player and Carolina in general?
Yeah, Carolina in general, I do think that he obviously, like by the numbers, has deployed his top guys a little bit more this season, but I do think that's a little bit a function of the injuries and just the lack of depth behind. Yeah, you take away their top two players at forward in Svechnikov and Aho, and you're definitely going to lean on your top guys after that a little bit more because you just don't have the depth. No team does to replace your top two players. So a little bit of that happening for sure. Kotkaniemi, I was surprised how much I actually like the numbers here. 9.3 shots per 60 through 6 games on the season here. Previously bounced around between 6 and 7 for most of his career, shots per 60, so that's a nice number. Bringing that up, the individual scoring chances for per 60 had trended up overall in his time with Carolina and seems to be sustaining that a little bit. And then the on-ice numbers are really solid, even better than last year so far early in the young season here. So overall, it's a really nice start for Kotkaniemi. The points are coming too, which is obviously hopefully going to give him some confidence. I'm cautiously optimistic for Jesperi Kotkaniemi's prospects. It will definitely be interesting to see once Svechnikov is back, once Aho is back, what do the lines look like? Does Brind'Amour still continue to give Kotkaniemi 16 plus? Last year average 14.44 per night. That's not going to get it done for fantasy purposes. He absolutely has to be at least above 16 minutes for me to even consider picking him up even as a streamer in most leagues. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, but definitely a player who's piqued my interest and not one that I thought would at this point in the season. Lastly, in the hot shots here, I do want to talk about a couple of defenders, one from Kotkaniemi's Carolina Hurricanes, Jacob Slavin, who has 6 points in his last 5 games, 7 on the season in total, a couple of goals, averaging 19.5 minutes on the season, which is definitely not something we've seen from Slavin in the past. He's typically been a minute muncher for this team, has seasons over 23 minutes average time on ice, last season just below 22 minutes. Now this season averaging 19.05 on the season. So interesting that it seems like his role is changing a little bit here, but the results have been terrific. 11th amongst all defensemen in shots per 60, 20th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 27th in Corsi for per 60. Some pretty solid numbers under the hood. The deployment is concerning, but the underlying numbers are good. What do we do here, Blake? How do we make sense of this here?
I picked them up on one team, and this is, like a week ago, and I really, it was my streamer, and I wanted to drop him recently. I'm like, okay, I'll get rid of Slavin. And then, I just click on him really quick. I'm like, this guy's ranked 7th overall in my league. Like, I cannot drop Jacob Slavin. I mean, for love of Pete. So, and I think that's my Kakupful team. So yeah, Kakupful's really big on shots and blocks, and that's what this guy's doing. Plus he's getting goals and assists too. So he's just doing it all. But yeah, again, the deployment to me is, it just gives me pause. Like, why is he getting deployed 1906 average time on ice when, he's been 20 to 23 throughout his whole career, basically? It's interesting, right? But I love the production. 7 points in 6 games. I mean, he could finish the season with like 15 points. You know what I mean? Like, damn, that's not the type of player this is, but it's been a great start. And I think you got to hold him until, the wheels fall off, right? Until we see a couple games where it's, back to normal. Because if he's getting this deployment and he's not getting this production, like, what are we doing here, right? He's not getting any power play time whatsoever. So this is all at even strength, right? So I don't like any of that. But, he's ranked 7th overall in my league. And for God's sakes, I got to ride him until it just, ends it nicely. There you go. He's a good looking man too. Beautiful beard. So let's agree on that.
We can definitely agree on that. So let's do a little compare and contrast with Travis Sanheim here. Sanheim, 4 assists in 5 games to open the season, averaging over 26 minutes time on ice. Absolutely getting deployed in all situations, including now the top power play for the last couple of games here for the Flyers. So that's of interest. Underlying numbers are, I would say, unspectacular, but not atrocious. 58th in shots per 60, 51st in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 51st in Corsi, 4 per 60, and 36th in scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, solid numbers, especially given the 26 minutes average time on ice here. So Sanheim is someone who's interesting at the moment. I don't know how much I can really buy in on the high-end point potential here. It's a 67% IPP, so that's obviously on the high end for a guy like Sanheim, but overall, like, if you had to pick right now, Blake, between Slavin and Sanheim, at least for the next week, because neither of these players are guys that we're truly anticipating are going to be season-long holds, but for the next week, assuming, same amount of games, they're playing the same opponents, it's just an evaluation of the players at hand, who would you rather have?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, technically, I think the easy answer is Slavin because they have one off night, whereas Philly doesn't. But I'm going to go, let's just pretend they both have 3 games and no off nights to make everything even. I think you got to go Sanheim. Like, I need the deployment, right? And 26 minutes compared to 19, that's huge, right? That's 7 more minutes for him to do something, right? And if there's any banger waiting whatsoever in a points league, or if you're in a bangers league, like, Sanheim does that better than Slavin. Slavin will get a bunch of blocks, no question, but he doesn't hit really, and he's not getting any power play time, right? So I think Sanheim is the safer answer. But again, if you pick, like me, if you picked up Slavin, how do you drop him? Like, I don't think I would drop Jacob Slavin to pick up Travis Sanheim. I would just hold Jacob Slavin and enjoy that. Slavin Maven. Every time I hear Slavin, I think of Professor Frink from The Simpsons. I nice lady, Slavin. Yeah. I don't know why I lost that, but yeah, I don't know. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm going to chase the deployment there between 2 players where I don't have a strong take on the talent level. Obviously, Slavin, the better underlying metrics at the moment, but definitely something he's never shown before on at least on a rates basis across his entire career at this point. So I think I just chased the deployment and the minutes there with Sanheim. Okay, we're going to get into some have-nots, the coldest players across the league. Before we get there, though, I want to plug the Discord. Check the show description, click the link, join the Apples and Genos Discord server. You can talk fantasy with a bunch of like-minded fantasy hockey managers any time of the day. There will be people in there willing to chat with you, so get in there. If you're looking for more specific help, you can check out the Apples and Genos Patreon, also linked in the show description. If you need assistance and you want someone like myself to give you some advice, I do guarantee a response to every question posted in the patron-only chat in the Discord server. So get into the Apples and Genos Patreon if you're looking for some real specific advice. And also, I want to mention again the daily summaries that 18 Skaters Mark Barber is posting on the Apples and Genos website. You have to go and check that out. You absolutely have to be looking at that every single day. It's terrific information, all distilled for you in really easy to read format, so you can peruse everything, especially from these massive Saturday game slates where you're like, oh man, am I really going to go through box scores here and check out what happened? You can just read through this and get it really brief and terrific summary of everything that happened for fantasy purposes from that. While you're here, if you can, click like and subscribe on YouTube. That helps us out a lot. If you're listening, give us a quick rating. We really do appreciate those things. All right, Blake, let's talk about some have-nots, the coldest players across the league. I have to say, one of the most surprising coldest players to open the season is Gustav Forsling. has 0 points in 5 games to open the season, despite skating almost 25 minutes on a Florida team that we all know can score goals. This is pretty surprising. A guy that a lot of people thought was a shoo-in to be the top power play quarterback, at least until Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad get back from their respective injuries. That has not come to fruition. It's been Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's been pretty good. So it doesn't seem like Forsling is in line to get those juicy power play minutes anytime soon, but he's also just been downright atrocious for fantasy purposes, like not shooting, not doing much of anything. The on-ice numbers don't look good. What is going on here with Forsling? And if you are holding him at this point, are you just asleep at the wheel?
Oh, Gustavo, ay Dios mío, what are you doing, Gustav? Oh man, I don't know why I made Gustav Forsling Spanish, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah, he's inexplicably forgotten how to shoot. Can you shoot the puck, my man? His deployment is still awesome, right? Yeah, he's not getting power play 1, so that's fine, but he didn't have power play 1 last season. So what the hell is the difference? It's like, it feels like there's maybe something going on, like an injury, or maybe something the coach is wanting him to take on a different role or something like that. Like maybe something we don't know, because I cannot put my finger on it. But obviously, as you said, the metrics, like it's ridiculous. This is a guy that was known for shot production from the back end, right? He was one of the best in the league at that. Like Florida was one of the best in the league at that last season, right? Not so far this season. So I mean, when you lose 2 amazing defensemen like that, and you had a long playoff run, like who knows if he's got a bit of a hangover from that, or he's still nursing some injuries or whatever. But yeah, it's rough. I don't know. I don't think you can really hold Gustav Forsling in like this week coming up, right? They have a 2-game week. Like, I don't know. I'm not fretting too much if I have to drop Forsling there. But I mean, this is a player that, it's just disappointing, right? We're not angry, Gustav. We're just disappointed. All right. And yeah, I'm sure he's trying his best and he's a good person. But yeah, I don't know. Did you pick up Forsling anywhere? Like I literally thought I was being so slick. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get Forsling at like 130. Beautiful. Power play 1 defenseman. I'm going to smash. And I did get him in 2 spots. And yeah, the show ain't no good.
No, don't have Forsling anywhere. Yeah, basically once the power play was gone, that kind of curtailed all of my interest in Forsling. Thought that he could be, a decent even strength guy who gets power play 2, things like that. But basically, as soon as I saw he was off power play 1, that dropped my my mental projection on what he could be for the early season a fair bit. And I was there's just always somebody who is convinced that, the OEL thing was a flash in the pan and Forsling would be there. Every single league, somebody took him earlier than I wanted to. So I was happy to let him go by. And this is obviously a bit surprising. I do think that this should bounce back, but I do tend to agree that they're asking him to do something different, because that is kind of the only explanation. I think maybe it's a function of OEL being a little bit more of a limited player and Forsling being the one guy that they really trust in this defense, the absolute most. And so they're like, you stay at home. We'll let OEL kind of be his own player as he gets accustomed to our system, and we'll let him run the power play. You focus on doing what you do. With middling results so far, so maybe it'll change in the future. But yeah, I think that's the case with Forsling. I think you should be dropping Forsling across pretty much every single format if you have not done so already. Barrett Hayton is another one I want to talk about because, again, same deployment between Keller and Schmaltz, top line, top power play, doing all those things. 19.5 minutes average time on ice, 66th in the league in individual scoring chances, 4/60 is a nice number. The on-ice numbers, not so hot, 146th in Corsi, 4/60, 97th in scoring chances, 4/60. But I mean, you just feel like this guy's got to run into some points here. It doesn't seem like he's playing terribly by the underlying metrics. He's never been like an elite underlying metrics guy, but he definitely took a strong step last year towards the end of the year and showed that he could play as a top-line player. You do have Logan Cooley, the specter of Logan Cooley. Will he take over if Barrett Hayton continues to be unable to produce points? It definitely hasn't affected Schmaltz and Keller. Those guys are still going off. But what's your thoughts on Hayton here? Do you think this is a player that you're still going to be picking up? Do you think that Cooley's going to unseat him? What's your thoughts?
I don't think Cooley's going to unseat him anytime soon. Maybe like Cooley's already on the power play. I think he's probably going to get the Adam Fantilli treatment, right? Cooley will, where he's get that second line center, just kind of, slowly develop up, right? Not have to be relied on here. But yeah, it is concerning, right? 0 points in 5 games for Hayton. But honestly, like last season, he had 43 points, right? So that's not an amazing season, right? So our expectations need to be managed with this player, right? I predicted him for, what the heck was it? Like 56 points for Hayton, in which he could still get, I think, pretty easily, right? It's been a slow start, but I think we just have to manage expectations. It is unfortunate though, because Keller and Schmaltz are balling out of control, and this guy's, he's filling up the water bottles and patting his guys on the bum, right? So, and that's nice, right? You need a guy like that, but I do trust the player and I trust the deployment. So everything else too, 5-on-5, like all his metrics, they're very similar to what they were last season. So there's nothing kind of outstanding besides the fact that he's shooting 0%, which is going to get better. This guy almost had 20 goals last year. I could see him doing it again quite easily, but he could just be a streaky player too.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of all of that there. I do have interest in Barrett Hayton. Definitely won't hesitate to stream him when there's a good schedule for the Coyotes again. Let's talk a little bit about Rasmus Sandin. Going to be a bit of a hot topic this week in particular with the nice schedule for Washington and Sandin's general availability out there. Is one of the few players on the Washington Capitals who's controlling play when he's out there, along with John Carlson, who's his partner at even strength. Definitely not going to take power play 1 away from John Carlson anytime soon. If you believed anybody who told you that, I don't know what to tell you. That was never going to happen. Rasmus Sandin is still a solid player in my mind, getting 22 minutes and 12 seconds average time on ice. And yeah, tend to think that, the like the Corsi 4 numbers, the underlying numbers here, as good as they could be given how badly the season has started for the Washington Capitals. So I am fairly interested in Rasmus Sandin despite the 0 points in 4 games to open. Your thoughts, Blake?
Yeah, I'm right with you there. I did pick him up in one of, I think, our expert league. Yeah, I dropped. Oh, no, it wasn't our expert league. I picked someone else up there. But yeah, I just picked up Sandin for one of my teams, and I'll probably be looking to add him somewhere else. He's just on the ice. Like, it's important. And not just that he's on the ice, but we know historically this is a player that can do stuff for your fantasy team, right? He's a beefer, 136 hits, 87 blocks last season in 71 games. That's awesome, right? And like you said, Washington has really limped out the gate here. They have not looked good. And he's been, the points aren't there, but some of the metrics are reasonable. The deployment is really good, right? Averaging 22 minutes, 13 seconds. I like what I'm seeing here. Obviously, he's going to be a power play 2 guy. No problem there. But you're going to get 3 solid games out of this player. And I think he's worth an ad this week for sure. But yeah, you'd like to see a little something, right? This is still a young guy. Like, he needs some, he needs something to go in, or a second assist here and there. Come on, buddy. What are you doing? And then, yeah, definitely go ahead and take the power play 1 from John Carlson. That's not going to happen. But he can do it for sure. But yeah, Washington's just been terrible so far.
For sure. Let's keep pushing. We got to talk about Tage Thompson again. I know that he's a hot topic everywhere. 1 goal only in the 5 games to start the season. 16-point pace, 82-game pace for Tage Thompson.
Just like we expected.
Just like we expected. Averaging just under 19 minutes time on ice per game here. I'll toss it to you right away, Blake. Your thoughts on Tage Thompson. What are you doing with him if you have him? Are you interested in acquiring? Your thoughts?
Absolutely interested in acquiring. Buy low, mega buy low. I mean, see what's going on out there. This guy just put up a 10-shot game. And his deployment's back, right? In the last 3 games, 21-51, 21-16, and then 18-18 last game. Those are great numbers. And again, 10 shots on goal in 1 game. This is what you want from Big Tage, right? So it's coming. They've obviously changed the lines up a little bit there in Buffalo, so we'll see how that holds. But he's either with his regular line, Alex Tuck and Jeff Skinner, or Dylan Cousins. All right. So, he's got some players to play with. He's a power play 1. Buffalo is kind of trying to figure things out here. So I'm not concerned at all about Tage. I love the underlying numbers. I just trust it. Do we, this is an interesting question, Nate. Do we trust these numbers too much? Because sometimes I'm like Nikolai Ehlers is another one for sure. I'm like, I love the numbers. It's great. And Nikolai Ehlers is not Tage Thompson. I'm not saying that, everybody, but this guy's done it before, and he's still doing it right now with the numbers. The goals, I think, will come. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tage Thompson is an absolute stud. I think
Big time.
that there's every chance that we get to the end of the season and this is a 105-point player, something in that range. That would not shock me in the slightest. So I'm all aboard with Tage Thompson. I think I projected him. I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure I projected him for around 18 minutes average time on ice. Yeah, 1845. He's right around that right now.
Me too.
Anything above that, as he's seen in the last 3 games here, he's gone considerably above that. In a couple of games, he's gotten over 21 minutes. You know, if he starts to trend up there, then the projection just goes through the roof for him. And yeah, he's absolutely crushing. 5th in shots per 60, 21st in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, on ice numbers too, 13th in Corsi, 4 per 60. Like when he is on the ice, he is tilting the ice in Buffalo's favor. And I think the world of Tage Thompson. I think he's a first round talent for fantasy purposes. Okay, one more player just want to touch on before we close out the have-nots. Rickard Rakell. This is a little bit of a puzzler because you'd think that with how things are going for guys like Malkin and the others, that Rakell would be able to get in on some of these points, but the 14% IPP has resulted in a measly 1 assist in 5 games for Rakell, averaging about 16 and a half minutes time on ice. The underlying numbers are pretty solid. 63rd in shots per 60, 73rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. The Corsi 4 and scoring chances 4 on ice are both really good. 14th and 16th in the league, respectively, there. So you like to see that, but the production is absolutely not there for Rakell. Are there better days ahead for Rakell? Is this a buy low candidate? What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, absolutely a buy low candidate to me. I mean, his opportunity is there. Like that's something we need to look at in players, and this guy has it, right? He's line 2 with Malkin, who's flying right now. Obviously, we talked about him. And he's also power play 1, right? I thought Rakell was going to be kind of a casualty of Carlson coming to the team there in Pittsburgh, but they ended up moving Letang to second power play, and Rakell kept his spot on power play 1. And that's a great place to be. So his deployment is great. I mean, the numbers, I'd like to see it a little higher. Last season, he was averaging 1826. This season, only 1625, right? So that's significant as well. 2 minutes less, right? But he's shooting more. All his numbers are pretty nice. Like if you kind of dig in a little bit here, shots on goal per 60 over 5 games, he's at 12, like over 12. That's excellent, right? Corsi 4 would be a career high. Scoring chances for individual would be right in line with career numbers. So he's doing everything right. He's just not converting, right? And I tend to think like with those on ice numbers, access to Malkin and that power play 1, that it's going to start coming. But yeah, again, just needs to convert, right? And this guy throughout his career has not been an amazingly efficient player, right? So we'll see. I think points are coming though, and I love kind of the situation he's in. I'd like to see a few more minutes though.
Agree with all that for sure. I think that Rakell is in a good spot for the time being, and I'm definitely interested in acquiring him if someone is fed up with him and was potentially even thinking about dropping him based on the early returns. So there's definitely something to be said for that. All right. Well, if we didn't talk about a player you wanted to hear about in these couple of segments here, you should definitely check out the Puzzling Players live stream that I do every Monday evening at 8 p.m. EST. Come join that. I ask the Apples and Genos Discord crew for all of their puzzling players, usually sometime early afternoon on Monday. They all get in there, give me all the puzzling players, the players that they're worried about the most, the players that they have the most questions about moving forward, and then I talk through them live. And you can also come and join live and ask your questions live, and I can get into those on the stream as well. So definitely come and join that if you didn't hear a player on here that you're interested in hearing more analysis on. Blake, we've got to move on to move of the week. And this week, I think you got a good one for us. Why don't you lay it on us?
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to secure a pretty sweet trade in a points league that I had. I had actually an abundance of defensemen. I have Werenski and Seider, and I was able to get Chychrun as well. Like someone dropped Chychrun really early on, so I picked him up. And I also had John Carlson. And I just kind of located a team that needed some defensemen, and they happen to have Philip Forsberg on the team, a player I've been talking about and I'm excited about. And so, it's a head-to-head. So I was able to flip John Carlson for Philip Forsberg 1-for-1 in that league. And then Forsberg had a goal and an assist in his next game. And, I was able to win a close matchup. So to me, that's a clear win. I had an abundance of defensemen. Like it doesn't feel good to get rid of John Carlson, especially because I'm high on the player as well, right? I know, Nate, you got him in the top 5, one in your top 5 defensemen this league at the beginning anyway. And he's right up there for me as well, especially because of the value you got him in drafts. But I look at things like that too with trades. Like I ended up drafting him at like 70 or something in that league, right? And now I got him, like both these players were actually their ADPs were stupid in Yahoo, Forsberg and Carlson. So I don't know. I just feel like Forsberg is this sky's the limit, the way he's being deployed this season. He's getting that first line treatment there in Nashville, and he's also doing something with it, right? He's got some chemistry with Ryan O'Reilly. So yeah, anyways, I won my matchup because of that trade, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a good point, just to identify in trading like your strengths versus another team's weaknesses and how you can use that. And, not every trade has to be a clear win for one side and a clear loss for the other side. You can definitely find scenarios in which it's a win for both teams to kind of spread out the production in your lineup and get what you need out of a trade. For myself here, the move that I'm going to highlight that I made in a league this week, I was in the Patron League actually against Hutch this week, and we kind of polarized the categories a little bit throughout the week, and he was basically out 5-4. He actually snuck out a win with James Reimer here today, and I'm hoping that John Gibson comes through for me and gets me back to 5-4 at least in this game against Boston. Right now it's 0-0 after 2, so it's an interesting one for sure. But anyway, basically, the move that I made was to pick up Gibson for this game today. Hutch had already picked up Reimer, so he already had him on the bench, kind of ready to go. And he actually had him on the bench, so he wasn't going to play him if he didn't have to. But then he saw that I picked up Gibson, so he put him in to get this win, basically, and to just give himself the saves category here to make sure he secured that. So it's a good move on his part. I thought that there was a chance that he didn't notice that Reimer was on his bench and forgot to put him in, and then I might be able to sneak saves away in that way. But also, I was looking at this team, which has Georgiev as the top goalie. Phoenix Copley was the other goalie I had, and I didn't want to be rostering Copley anymore. I just kind of turned out that I was moving through other players in my lineup and didn't drop Copley till now. But I wanted to have another goalie that was at least going to get some work. Obviously, in a categories league, you need to meet your minimums and things like that. Georgiev did that this week for me all on his own. But moving forward, I wanted to get somebody like a Gibson in there. And I think that Anaheim's a little bit better. They're definitely still towards the bottom of the league in most of the metrics that you like to look at. But I think that they're a better team, better vibes anyway around the team this year for sure. So I think that there could be a scenario here in which Gibson actually turns into a long-term hold on my roster, and definitely somebody who's going to get me those starts. So I have to think a little bit less about who my second goalie is going to be for this upcoming week. At least I'm definitely not married to Gibson and holding him for the long term here, but definitely think that this solidified, in a scenario like this where the categories were so polarized, I couldn't really make a move that was going to win me a category at this point, but I could make a move that might win me a category if my opposing manager kind of messed up and left a player on the bench. But at worst, I'm picking up a player who's useful for the following week. So these are the kinds of things you need to be looking at, I think, and planning ahead for in your leagues. Okay. Well, we only have one more item to get through here, Blake, and that is to recap our waiver wire pick from last week. From the week 2, I had Matt Coronado, you had Daniel Sprong. It came down to the wire, actually, but Daniel Sprong did end up ahead at the end of it all, so all kudos to you. This is your time. Would you like to address the crowd? Would you like to thank anyone? The floor is yours.
You're damn Skippy. I want to thank the Slinky got the win ski. Oh yeah, it was never in doubt. Actually, it's funny because these are two really bad streamers for this last week. They now we're talking about it. Yeah, it's like, neither of these guys popped in any fashion. Coronado got 1 assist. Sprong got 2. All right. And he got one of those assists for the 6-2 goal against Detroit today. So yeah, thank you, man. It was never in doubt, but yeah, these streamers are a bit stinky, but I'm happy for the Slinky. He's not stinky. All right. He brought me the Winsky. All right. I'm going to keep going with this reference. But yeah, Daniel Sprong, his deployment started going down. I hate that. Now they're giving him the Seattle treatment. So whatever. That's not a player I'm interested in unless he's getting like 15 minutes a night.
Yeah, definitely not a strong showing for either of our streamers. We're hoping that our guys for this upcoming week, Thomas Hurdle for me, Casey Middlestat for you, hopefully those guys do a little bit more and we get a little bit more of a barn burner rather than a couple of turtles inching towards the finish line.
Glacier pace here. Did you ever see that Family Guy where it was like Speed 3, Glacier of Doom? If this glacier goes less than 3 miles per year, we're all dead. I don't even know how I'm going this. Sorry, that's where my brain goes. Anyone, shout out to Family Guy. Carry on, Nate.
Well, that's going to be all that we got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. Hope you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which you should definitely go check out in your spare time. I don't know what else you would do with spare time, to be honest with you. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.